The Bitcoin maximalists just crossed a line. They're not just spreading doubt anymore, they're inventing outright lies. And the lie they chose to spread tells you exactly what they're afraid of. David Schwartz, Ripple's chief technology officer, had to step in personally to shut down the latest fabrication. Bitcoin maxes started circulating a claim that Ripple could reach into the XRP ledger and seize your coins whenever they want. Just take them, like flipping a switch. Schwartz's response was direct. Assets can only be clawed back by their issuer, and XRP has no issuer. That's a technical fact, not an opinion. XRP exists on a decentralized ledger with no central authority capable of freezing or confiscating it. Now, Ripple USD, the stablecoin, that's different. RLUSD can be clawed back because it's an issued asset with regulatory compliance built in, but XRP, impossible. The architecture doesn't allow it. So why invent this specific lie? Because it attacks the core reason people hold XRP, sovereignty over your own assets. If they can make you believe XRP isn't truly yours, they can make you sell it. And right now, they need you to sell. If this video resonates with you and you want to see the establishment's lies exposed every single day, tap that like button right now. Here's what's really happening. XRP isn't just another cryptocurrency competing with Bitcoin on philosophical grounds. It's becoming operational infrastructure for the global banking system. And that's the threat Bitcoin maxes can't talk their way around. For years, they've pushed this narrative that Bitcoin is inevitable, that everything else is noise, that all altcoins will eventually trend towards zero against BTC. They've built entire identities around this belief, but XRP keeps refusing to die. Worse, it keeps growing stronger. The attacks aren't random, they're strategic. When something threatens your worldview, you don't ignore it, you attack it. And the intensity of the attack reveals the size of the threat. So let's examine what they're actually afraid of, because by the end of this, you'll understand why XRP represents an existential crisis for Bitcoin maximalism and why that makes it one of the most asymmetric opportunities in this entire market cycle. Let's start with what they accidentally revealed. A video clip has been making the rounds showing a discussion about Goldman Sachs' cryptocurrency holdings. The firm reportedly holds $2.3 billion in digital assets. Here's how it breaks down. 46% Bitcoin, 42% Ethereum, 6% XRP, and 5% Solana. The host asked one of the panelists, a known Bitcoin supporter, to rate the portfolio. His response, I don't hate it. Then he pauses. I hate 6% of it. I don't really care for the XRP, but I don't know. If I'm Goldman Sachs, then maybe I'm into it. Let that sink in. He's fine with Ethereum. He's fine with Solana. Both of those are acceptable in his worldview. But XRP, that's where he draws the line. That's the 6% he hates. Why? It's not about technology. It's not about decentralization. Solana is more centralized than XRP by validator count. It's not about premines or founder allocations. Ethereum had those too. The hatred is specific, targeted, and emotional. And emotions in markets reveal underlying fears. Here's the truth they won't say out loud. XRP is the only asset in that portfolio designed to replace Bitcoin's narrative, not complement it, replace it. Bitcoin maxes built their entire thesis on the idea that Bitcoin is digital gold, a store of value, the hardest money ever created. That narrative works as long as nothing better exists. But XRP was explicitly built to be better Bitcoin, faster, cheaper, more scalable, and capable of actual utility beyond speculation. And now institutions are validating that thesis with capital allocation. Goldman Sachs isn't some retail investor buying hype. They have research teams, risk analysts, and compliance officers. They don't allocate $138 million to XRP because they're chasing memes. They allocate it because their models show strategic value. That 6% represents institutional acknowledgement that XRP has a role in the future of finance. And that's what Bitcoin maxes can't tolerate. If you're still with me and this perspective is expanding how you see the market, consider subscribing. I break down what's really happening in crypto every day. No hype, no BS, just the signal through the noise. But institutional portfolios are just the surface. The real story is what's happening in the banking sector. And this is where the narrative completely falls apart for Bitcoin. SBI Holdings, one of Ripple's oldest and most strategic partners, just announced they're acquiring CoinHako, a major digital asset platform in Singapore. The goal? Expanding the global corridor for digital assets and accelerating tokenization across Asia. SBI doesn't make moves like this in isolation. They own 9% of Ripple and hold significant XRP reserves. Every expansion they make is infrastructure for XRP's utility. This isn't speculative, this is operational, and they're not alone. Ripple now works with over 300 banks and financial institutions globally. These aren't partnerships in name only. They're actively using Ripple's licensed payment infrastructure for real-time cross-border settlements. In 2025, Amina Bank became Ripple's first European banking partner, integrating Ripple USD and enabling clients to move between blockchain and traditional banking systems seamlessly. Then there's the regulatory shift. The U.S. Office of the Controller of the Currency granted conditional trust bank charters to Ripple and other leaders in the space that created a unified federal framework for digital asset management. It's not coming, it's here. Now compare that to Bitcoin. What operational infrastructure is Bitcoin building with traditional finance? What banks are integrating Bitcoin for cross-border settlement? The answer is none. Bitcoin's institutional narrative is about holding it on a balance sheet, not using it. Michael Saylor's MicroStrategy is the poster child for this approach. Buy Bitcoin, take on debt, hold forever, and assume number goes up. But let's talk about what Saylor actually said recently, because it exposes the fragility of that entire model. In an interview, Saylor was asked, what happens if Bitcoin falls 90% over the next 4 years? His answer, we'll refinance the debt. We'll just roll it forward. The host pushed back. You think banks would lend to you at that point? Saylor's response was telling, yeah, because the volatility of Bitcoin is such that there's always going to be value. It literally has to fall to $8,000. Then we just refinance the debt. The CNBC host's face said everything. He couldn't believe what he was hearing, and he shouldn't, because that's not how banks think. Banks assess risk, collateral quality, and cash flow. They don't share Saylor's religious conviction that Bitcoin only goes up. If Bitcoin drops 90%, the banks aren't going to say, sure, Michael, let's roll that debt forward. They're going to say, your collateral just evaporated, pay up or we liquidate. Saylor's entire strategy depends on one assumption. Bitcoin never has a prolonged bear market again. But markets don't work that way. And now there's a macro risk he's not accounting for, Tether. If Tether loses its peg, the liquidity that props up Bitcoin's price vanishes overnight. That's not FUD. That's structural reality. Bitcoin's price discovery happens primarily on Tether pairs. Remove that and you're looking at a cascade that makes 90% look optimistic. Meanwhile, XRP's value proposition doesn't depend on perpetual appreciation. It depends on usage. And usage is ramping up in ways that don't require you to take on billions in debt and prey. But here's where it gets interesting, because there's a phenomenon around XRP that nobody has been able to explain. And it keeps happening. You've probably seen the screenshots, XRP flashing on exchanges at prices that make no sense. $21,355 per coin. Not a typo, not Photoshop. It happened live on television, and it's not the only time. These glitches occur with XRP more frequently than any other cryptocurrency. Why? The standard explanation is exchange errors, bugs in the order book, fat finger trades. But if that were true, why doesn't it happen to Bitcoin? Why not Ethereum? Why not Solana? Those assets have far more trading volume and far more liquidity. If random glitches were the cause, they'd be distributed evenly. But they're not. They're concentrated on XRP. Here's the theory that makes more sense. We're glimpsing the private ledger. Institutions and central banks are testing XRP at different price points behind closed doors. Occasionally, those test transactions bleed through into public F-facing systems. A glimpse behind the curtain, not proof, but a pattern too consistent to ignore. Those glitches will eventually become reality. And when they do, the people who held through the manipulation will be the ones who benefit. But whether or not you believe the glitch theory, what's undeniable is what Ripple is building right now. And it's about to change everything. Ripple just released its 2026 development roadmap for the XRP ledger, and the features they're launching in the next few months create something that doesn't exist anywhere else in crypto. First up, confidential transfers. This is launching in Q1 2026. It allows encrypted balances and opaque transactions while still remaining auditable by regulators. Why does this matter? Because institutions need privacy. They can't have competitors frontar running their large trades. They can't have their asset positions broadcast to the world, but they also need regulatory compliance. Confidential transfers thread that needle. You get privacy without sacrificing auditability. Second, native protocol level lending, also Q1 2026. This allows lenders to earn yield and borrowers to access capital directly on the ledger designed specifically for institutional use. For the first time, XRP holders will have on-chain ways to generate returns without moving their assets to external platforms that attracts more capital. More capital means more liquidity. More liquidity means better price stability. Third, permission decentralized exchanges. This is coming in Q2 2026. These are on ledger marketplaces where trading happens inside controlled environments with KYC and AML compliance built in. Institutional investors can trade tokenized real-world assets, stocks, bonds, commodities, without worrying about regulatory violations. And every transaction requires XRP for fees and account funding. Now put all three together. By mid-2026, an institution will be able to borrow capital on Ledger, buy a tokenized asset on a permissioned DEX, hold it with confidential privacy, and close the trade when ready, all while staying compliant. There's nowhere else in crypto where you can do that. Not on Ethereum, not on Solana, not on Bitcoin, only XRP. This isn't speculative, this is infrastructure. And infrastructure is what drives mass adoption, not hype, not narratives, actual utility. If you're realizing that XRP is building something fundamentally different from everything else in this space, hit that subscribe button now. This is the kind of analysis you won't find anywhere else, and I'm putting it out every single day. And that brings us to the big question. What does mass adoption actually mean for XRP holders? Because this is where the game changes completely. For years, crypto has been driven by speculation. People didn't buy Bitcoin to use it. They bought it hoping it would 10x, 100x, 1000x. That's been the engine of this market, retail investors chasing exponential returns. And it worked. Early Bitcoin holders made generational wealth. Early Ethereum holders did the same. That's the dream everyone's chasing. But here's what most people don't understand. That era is ending. Not because crypto is dying, because it's maturing. Once institutions adopt these assets at scale, the volatility compresses. You won't see 100x runs anymore. You'll see 10% gains, 20% gains, maybe 50% in a good year. That's how mature assets behave. XRP is approaching that threshold faster than anything else, and that means this cycle right now is the last opportunity for exponential returns. If XRP runs to $50, $100, or higher during this cycle, and you sell expecting it to crash back down so you can rebuy cheaper, you're going to be wrong because the institutions won't let it crash. They'll be using it. Utility creates a floor. Once that floor is established, it doesn't break. Think about it logically. If banks are using XRP for cross-border settlements at $100 per coin, and that price allows the liquidity they need, why would they let it drop to $10? They wouldn't. They'd buy the dip. That creates support. And support prevents the kind of 90% drawdowns we've seen in previous cycles. So this is your moment, not the next cycle, not the one after that, this one, right now. If you don't position yourself correctly during this run, you won't get another chance at life-changing returns. You'll be chasing 10% moves while the people who held through the manipulation are already generationally wealthy. And yes, I also think Flare is in a similar position. Dirt cheap, massively undervalued, building real infrastructure, but that's a conversation for another video. Now here's the part nobody wants to talk about because it's not exciting. It's not hopeful, but it's necessary. Let's say you're right. Let's say XRP does what we think it's going to do. Let's say you turn a modest investment into 7 figures. Congratulations. You've just made yourself a target. Crypto entrepreneurs are being hunted, literally. The CEO of Binance France just survived a home invasion robbery attempt. The suspects were arrested, but the message is clear. People know who's making money in this space, and some of them are willing to use violence to take it. This isn't an isolated incident. There's a pattern forming. High-profile figures in crypto are being targeted for robbery, extortion, and worse, and it's not just the ultra-wealthy. If you're posting on Twitter about your gains, if you're sharing screenshots of your portfolio, if you're publicly celebrating your wins, you're painting a target on your back. Here's the rule. Stay anonymous when you make money. If you make money, keep it to yourself. Don't post about it, don't brag, don't make yourself visible. The satisfaction of social media validation is not worth your safety. Wealth is quiet, desperation is loud, be quiet. But let's zoom out for a second because there's a bigger picture here that goes beyond just making money. XRP holders, real ones, the ones who've been through the SEC lawsuit, the years of suppression, the endless FUD, they see things differently. They're awake in a way most people aren't. You've probably noticed this. XRP holders don't just talk about price. They talk about the financial system. They talk about central bank digital currencies. They talk about surveillance, control, and sovereignty. They see the matrix and they see XRP as the escape hatch. Because here's what's coming. CBDCs, universal basic income, programmable money that can be turned off if you say the wrong thing or support the wrong cause. That's not conspiracy theory anymore. That's policy. Central banks are building it right now. And once it's in place, your financial freedom is gone. But crypto, real crypto, decentralized crypto can't be turned off. The government can't freeze your XRP wallet. They can't stop a transaction on the ledger. They can't debank you with a keystroke. That's why this matters. It's not just about getting rich. It's about preserving freedom in a system designed to eliminate it. And here's the kicker. The AI revolution is coming. machine to-chain payments, autonomous agents transacting with each other in real time. What do you think they're going to use? Dollars, CBDCs? No, they're going to use fast, cheap, programmable assets. And XRP is explicitly designed for that use case. What we're holding isn't just valuable in dollars. It's valuable in the economy that's being built right now, while most people aren't paying attention. So where does that leave us? Bitcoin maxes are spreading lies because they're scared. Institutions are allocating capital because they see the future. Banks are building infrastructure because they need it. Ripple is launching features that make XRP indispensable. And this cycle, this moment right here, is the last chance for exponential returns before the market matures. You can choose to see it or you can choose to ignore it. But the game is playing out in real time. The manipulation is real, the suppression is real, but so is the adoption. And the people who make it through to the other side, the ones with patience, conviction, and the ability to ignore the noise, they're the ones who win. So here's my question for you. And I want you to answer this honestly in the comments. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that XRP reaches triple digits during this cycle? Drop your number below. Let's see where this community really stands. And if you found value in this breakdown, smash that like button and subscribe, because I'm bringing you this level of insight every single day. Until next time, stay patient, stay sharp, and let's navigate this